and to me because who are you? Yes.
Why do we? Well, my name is Angela.
What do you think? I think
I think
or what do you study?
critical thinking, and I am involved with education, and I've had so many questions, and always that's
My name's Paul. I study and teach history, and I also am the director of the library.
Alia, I teach history courses at SSAH.
My name is Kazi. I teach visual communication courses such as film and design, and I specialize in autism spectrum of disorders.
My name is Dries, and I teach history at work.
That's why the mic went wide, and he started talking about the future.
AI was identifying the enemy. Learned.
My name is Ahmed Kabin, and I teach the Sufi theory and history of BMS of Moroccan history.
I'm Krishna, and I teach in the Human Development Program.
Nick Lee, psychology.
Adam, and I teach screenwriting, and I'm a digital sobriety, and a miserablest in general about me.
You are all safe to express whatever you feel about. Guarantee this is a safe space. This is a safe
This
space.
feels like a talking, like a therapy group.
Hi,
A 5-star, 6.
Is Maria?
Hi, my name is Maria, and I teach rhetoric and composition. And currently, I'm doing research on online learning policies in higher education.
Ryan Davidson. I teach literature, programming, and composition.
I'm Kaza Ronde, and I teach communication studies. Media and Gilbert.
hello. My name is Taja, and I teach English composition and topic speaking.
I'm Asma. I study politics and aesthetics. And Cornelia, and I studied law a long time ago.
Which law?
I started out with the very basic one.
And which country's law?
I'm sorry?
Which country's laws?
That's why everything that I'm doing is somewhat convoluted. So I started in Germany and then went to France, did my degrees in international European law there, and then continued on with 2 masters in humanitarian assistance and international crisis law. So international would be the answer.
Do you mind if I just record this for us? Because I think my sense is that we could possibly talk about things we don't get to talk about otherwise, and it could be nice ways to remember. It's not for anybody else, but for us. And I think there might be, my suspicion is we will have, if it's possible.
I'm recording.
Perfect. Okay, thank you.
whether you like it or not.
Guys, it's already been fixed. So it's my pleasure, and of course, Cornelia.
Sorry?
So my name is Malvi Sharik from Pakistan, and I am currently student of politics, but I teach media-related courses, art and media. So more the people.
And our colleague Clarice on about is the lawyer I was mentioning. So, and that's us. Professor Deepak Taji, who teaches is a linguist and teaches public speaking. So of course, it's my pleasure to welcome Dr. Cornelia Walther, and I already shared an extensive bio to kind of locate our conversation today a little bit outside of the Dhamma training or compliance or subject production. So Because I was introduced to Dr. Walther in a conversation with the president and the BPA and Dr. Mustakfir a few weeks ago, where the idea of pro-social AI, which again Dr. Walther will explain to you a little bit, came up, and I felt that there was something in the that was kind of on the periphery of the usual conversations we've been having about the way that about kind of a relationship between AI as a tool and pedagogy, or like what could it do to diversity, and that it threw the question wider than the one of adoption or rejection. And at that light, that was a good opportunity for us. And I feel like just I'm comfortable enough saying that, yeah, I think our PICOP had needed a space where the conversation does exceed one about adoption and rejection, because we're thinking about things on many different dimensions that actually could enable a worthwhile intervention or contribution to the conversation on AI, but that's not the thing that rises kind of the instruction in the wider discourse at AUR. So I felt like it's a nice space to have for ourselves where people can speak. But also, so I would like to begin with asking. So I'll kind of ask a few questions, and then we can just converse. I think the goal is to each of us to, just feel free to think along with and not come to defend or, assert a position on things. So, Dr. Walther, thank you so much for being with us, and this impressive service to humanity that has shaped your life and in so many different contexts and countries. That already makes you our friend and, collaborator and partner in so many ways. Our school's signal contribution over the years has been to be the kind of the ethical, moral, intellectual compass of the claim to liberal arts at AUI, but also widely in Morocco, being able to be the first university to teach English to people who promise to be future leaders and representatives of Morocco, and representatives of good, not only on behalf of the state, but on behalf of its people. So I think that your invocation of the question of sociality, of society, felt very resonant, especially when we are trying to carve out a space and a legitimacy for the project of education, of humanistic education in AUI in Morocco for the forthcoming many years. So thank you and especially it's important to introduce that we do have programs where we teach students international studies, communication studies and media, digital marketing, environmental studies and sustainability, human resource development, territorial planning and management, AI and human society, digital humanities and cultural production. So there is our and North African and Middle Eastern studies. So we are a very unique and very diverse bunch of faculty who have kind of stepped out of their program affiliations in order to think collectively about, agendas for the subjects of interdisciplinary learning that fits the liberal arts model a lot more. And importantly and fundamentally, besides these degree programs, we are the heart and soul of AUI's general education, liberal arts teaching, because we teach all of its students everything from critical thinking skills to philosophy to history to writing to communication and to artistic representation and production and creativity, originality. So everything that sort of is in question when we think about authenticity and authorship in relationship to AI is very, very much at home and is our bread and butter. So again, your work in development, humanitarianism is very, very much at home with the work our students do. So we see us as your friends, and we are eager to learn about your life and how it got you to engage with AI and see it as this moment or as this occasion for thinking about life in the world and human futures in the way that you do now.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think my current focus on AI in general and pro-social AI in particular has somehow organically arisen from what I've been doing over the past, I would say, 25 years. As I mentioned before, I studied law and then started working with the UN in Mali for 3 years. Got an offer from UNICEF, went with them to the border area to Darfur, was there for 3 years, then went to Afghanistan with UNICEF, then continued to Congo, so the DRC for 4 years, went from there to Haiti for 4 years, and then have been for 1 year in UNICEF headquarters, signed their global communication strategy, and then decided it's time for radical change, left the UN, and started to write a first book, which came out and which looks at individual existence as a composition of twice four dimensions with aspirations, emotions, thoughts, and sensations at the individual level, and individuals as part of communities, countries, and the planet at the collective level. And that if we really want to bring about sustainable social change or individual transformation, we need to not only look at each of these dimensions, but start to recognize and deliberately influence their interplays. And the reason that I had started to look at that multidimensional logic was, or the point of departure was a prototype that I developed whilst working in Haiti with social workers, and where I aim to move beyond the UN's classic approach, where humans are very much looked at as a shopping list, as a checklist, and where we pick and choose what fits our mandate, and we don't really look at it from a 360-degree perspective. But in the moment where you don't recognize that human beings are very complex beings, you're missing out on a lot of the things that are needed if we think about well-being. And UNICEF looks at education, at water, at food, at protection, but very rarely at the interplays. And if you don't look at interplays, you're missing out on synergies and in symbiosis. And the same holds true when one thinks about humans not as part of the social environments that they are part of, but also the planet that we all are part of. So all of this to be said, that was my point of departure. Now, I did not expect that one book would lead to a second one, which places this multidimensional understanding, which I termed fuzzy at the time, and which stands for inner peace in Haitian Creole, and which is what Haitian colleagues at the time came up with as a name, and which has stuck to this 4x4 dimensional logic. So wrote a second book, and then COVID happened, and it seemed like now we need a systemic approach and radical change more than ever. So wrote another book, which also came out, and then starting in 2021, I became more interested in technology. So wrote about aspirational algorithms in 2021, or ChatGPT became the label, and AI the thing that is scotched on everything just to make it cool. And then wrote about inspiring leadership, and ever since have been intrigued by the potential of technology for positive change at scale. But with a book that came out last year on human leadership for humane technology, and another one that's coming out later this year on AI for IA, so artificial intelligence for inspired action.
Inspiring what?
Artificial intelligence for inspired action. And I think it's all coming back very much to this question of what I alluded to this morning. We can't expect technology of tomorrow to be better than the humans of today. So it's still this very old saying of garbage in, garbage out, or values in, values out. But the values that we want to see manifest in the technology that is going to shape the future will be in line is the values that we as humans and as communities and as society stand for today. So, yeah, out of this to be said, it's a huge opportunity, a huge privilege, I think, to be alive today. And it invites us to look at some of the really uncomfortable questions that humanity has shied away from for a long time, but also that education systems have shied away from for a long time.
Thank you so much. One of the things we were discussing as part of this conversation around privilege of being alive, I was coming at it from a different perspective, picking that, yes, and technically, like, given how the world is, we should all be dead, right? Like, there's no real reason. I think the privilege of being alive is coupled with this sort of survival guilt that there's really no, we don't have a right to life any more than those who are being plowed by all the forces that are also complicit in the production of these new technologies. So there is certainly, again, a privilege coming from that sort of life, that this unearned gift that we have. And also, I mean, I couldn't help but think about this, the way that you're speaking of this occasion, this opening, right? This moment of, like, who's just like coming from how, what the pandemic was as a sort of a precursor of this kind of a global crisis moment that was an opportunity to rethink who we were, how had we brought the world to be how it was, who was going to rethink what the classroom is, who was going to rethink what it means to keep people alive, who's responsible for people's lives. All of those were opportunities even then, right? To rethink the state, to rethink communities, rethink like what it means to keep each other alive. And so I cannot help but in my body and in every way feel like this is a moment like that. But I'm also discouraged by the fact that that moment, like, only produced more life for the people who were killing everybody, right? And it's sort of, and the way that is unfolded in recent geopolitics and is unfolding right now, also points to the things that weren't fixed that could have been fixed at the moment of the pandemic, then allowed to kind of unfurl the way they are. So I'm thinking of this question of opportunity from the perspective of that kind of opportunity, the privilege that something, an emergent technology, depending on who engages with it, who produces it, could have potential for human beings. And so I want to know a little bit more what sort of moment you think this is, and where can we go beyond the defense of what was, right? Because every moment of which, like, we can think like, oh, like, we want to preserve the classroom as it was, we want to preserve the university. Like, why is the conversation about whether the university would survive or not, without asking, should it survive or not, right? So there are real questions about what should outlast, what should survive these changes. What do you feel, given your work in the world as a humanitarian, as someone who has seen the ends of societies and the beginnings of societies, like, where do you place it, this moment of opportunity in that context, right, of the world at this precipice of self-destruction, but what will get us, like, what about this technology for you is an opening for people like us to shape?
I think it's important that we recognize that a lot of the things in the world right now are not the way they should be, including the institutions that have kept society the way it is. And also the fact that technology in general has been driven during the first, second, and third industrial revolution by commercial intent. And that has been part of why we are where we are today. And I would argue that this time around, with this arguably fourth industrial revolution, it's important that humanity is put in the front and center, because AI is just having such far-reaching consequences on our ability to think, to feel, and to interact in an autonomous way that we can't leave it in the hands of Google, Microsoft, and OpenAI to determine what that technology should be like. So I think that would maybe be my first invitation to really say humanities or the humanities and education of the humanities is now more important than ever, because what other space exists in society to really ask those questions and to cultivate those mindsets that can act them later on. And the second one could be to take a step back and look at, as I said this morning, the white elephant, the uncomplicated question, and the fact that a lot of things are not the way they should be in society. A lot of things are not the way they should be in institutions, and that includes universities. I mean, I community with a big white work in Congo, but because a lot of the institutions have a very siloed way of approaching thought leadership, and I don't think that's a good thing, because there is a lot of complementarity, and human mindsets need to evolve to think beyond boxes. But that's not how the education system works. But the education system is configured to keep people in their boxes. And you become an expert in the field that you are choosing at the beginning. But what will be one of the most critical skills in a hybrid future will be the ability to make connections and to think where the unusual connections can be made. So, yeah, I think really those are the two.
So yeah, before I want to invite our friends who've been thinking about these things. I want to maybe ask you to explain a little bit the conception of pro-social AI, and again, how has that idea been formed? What were the forces that helped you? Or, what were the conditions of the possibility of that thinking? And where have you found friends and interlocutors so that we can understand sort of, again, what's feeding you and nourishing you in these times? So I think just your own personal journey with pro-social, like the conception of pro-social, and like what is the social that it is pro?
So pro-social AI refers to AI systems that are tailor-trained, tested, and targeted to bring out the best in it for people and planets. So these 4 T's in a way. And what makes it different is what I referred to before, that the traditional AI is driven by commercial interests. And pro-social AI has as the point of departure that we can't leave it at that, because it's not good enough and it's not serving those who would need it the most. And I guess my point of departure was just looking at the world with technology as it has been over the past decades, and to come to the concept that that's not good enough. And that AI, if we just leave it in the current trend, it's going to give us more of the same. And yes, we will get that more of the same faster and maybe cheaper and with less effort, but that does not make it any better. And I think that is the most important thing, that it's not just about thinking good or bad, black or white, more or less, but it's also to think what can we do different, and how can we get that different something going and what we need to put in to make that happen. And the interesting thing, and I have spoken now to a really wide and diversified range of audiences, both here in Morocco, but also in Malaysia, where I'm also pursuing this question of for social AI and the global south as a champion for it, and in the US, in Europe, etc., etc. So ever and again, and in particular when I'm talking to people from the private sector or people from the so-called establishment, I'm always expecting that there will be a lot of resistance. And interestingly enough, I never find this. People might have questions. People might struggle to first entertain the thought that technology can be pro-social. Thank you. But nobody at so far come up to you and say, "Look, that AI is AI." People know somewhere deep down that it is not like the way it is, and something it not to be. And when we have tools at our fingertips that are so convenient, and then we can just delegate every single effort, somewhere deep down we know that at some point we come where we have to pay the bill. And that we can't just get it all without effort and not expect something to be missing. And unfortunately, that is the case with SSAH. That yes, we can delegate the writing. Yes, we can delegate the composing. Yes, we can delegate the interaction. There are now chatbots that can do the matchmaking for you. But unless there is the friction that is involved with being alive, you don't find the students and you don't gather what you could gather. So, yeah. Thank you.
I have a question for Dr. Walther. Your C-Core model refers to completion, compassion, creativity, and cooperation. Can you talk a bit more about what you mean by completion?
Completion is linked to one of the four principles that connect to or that underpin the paradigm that I mentioned before, which is complementarity, and which is this aspect that to be fully complete, we need to recognize the complementarity between seeming opposites and to recognize that nothing stands in isolation. In that answer.
So do you mean like totality, like a sort of the thinking about internal relations and like the idea of, that like
interdependency.
Yeah, more like you know what I mean by totality, right? Like that things are, that any object is itself a composite of,
yes.
Yeah, there are 6 years of tendency is a very important as I like in that yeah. But hybridity though, like because I've, coming from post-colonial studies, hybridity has a particular history.
Unhomely.
And yeah, exactly. Too unhomely. But yeah, so the hybridity and the sort of the uncanny and the hybrid, there's a way in which that the way the discourse of hybridity was, so much a way to kind of find a way to coexist, but also to challenge parts of ourselves that were, sourced from different places, that we weren't seeking purity, right? Purity had killed us. Miscegenation was good, that we had to preserve the possibility of impurities, right? That's otherwise you're a fascist. So there's a way in which I'm curious about how
the question of the hybrid comes into your discourse, right, in relationship to intelligence, because any idea of the hybrid invokes a history of a separation to begin with, right? So the nature social divide, or the production of nature as a way to think about history itself, right? Human history versus natural history, going back to Darwin. Like, what is being hybridized in your understanding of this new technology, right? Like, outside of the language of intelligence, if we could set aside the word intelligence and break it down into its constituent moments, right? See it as a totality. What are the pieces that you feel what are the boundaries or the synapses that are being connected in the hybridity that you're speaking about?
It's coming back to what I said before, that it's not so much, I think, to spend a lot of time thinking about binaries. Yeah, thinking so much about the either this box or that box, and how can we place a correct label on that box or this box. But that now is an opportunity to lift the labels and to lift the lids and to start thinking about how can we curate space, yes, where the complementarities are covered. Yeah. And that is not really how the past has evolved, but that has not made us to space. Yes. Because as humans, we like to think a lot about the other and about what separates us rather than what we have in common. And I think these 4x4 dimensions that I mentioned before, we all have them in common. No matter if we're men or women, if we're black, if we're white, or we're from the South or from the West, or whether we're rich or poor or educated or yet something else. And I think there is a lot of benefit to be had to first step into a state of common ground and then look at connections and look at what we can learn. And having lived in such radically different contexts for the past 25 years, if there's one thing that I've heard, it's that it's much harder when you think about right and wrong, when you realize that majority of things you have no clue about, that other people take for granted, because reverse side means that you take a lot of things for granted that the others have maybe never heard about. And I think if there's one aspect of human nature that we probably all share, it's this dislike of uncertainties, which is part of our evolutionary biology, that we dislike change and we're configured to seek certainty. But at the same time, there is a universal principle that only certainty we have is that everything is uncertain, because everything is always changing.
I thought you were going to say that.
But, so has no
that is not certain anymore.
So we have no control over what's happening next, which is also an opportunity, because we're all facing that same uncertainty. But holding on to whatever fixtures we think we have, it's just an illusion.
I was referring earlier to unknown. That's so Tanvi.
So what I was also picking.
But I think there is another way of looking at the hybrid, which often you see in relation to power. Precisely the problem with Walther's approach is that the hybridizing effects and practices of colonialism are also ways of reconfiguring colonial power, and they're not necessarily an embrace of the other. On the other hand, I don't think the assumption that things are not hybrid in themselves is tenable, because even the self, I mean, we have the invention of the self as a coherent project is a fabrication. And therefore, the self itself is a hybrid. And so what worries me in terms of how the hydrate metaphor. And we need to understand also the biological genealogies of the hydrate and its transformation in the humanities and social sciences into something more productive and more positive and so on and so forth, and then represents a template for transcending the binaries of self or the other, of pure and the impure, and so on and so forth. What intrigues me is that even when we think about high-grade forms of intelligence, we're not actually escaping the question. That we're not directly addressing the asymmetries of power between different kinds of intelligence, both in terms of institutional power, and also in terms of which sends me back also to the notion of crisis and human reckoning. I think it's very naive, to put it very correctly, to imagine the human beings, humanity as an abstraction will have a reckoning after a crisis, which leads us to really insist on the fact that we need to question the very category of the you, which analyze all these ideas about human-centered AI, and also to question the very notion of an abstract humanity that did have a reckoning in response to a moment of disruption. So I'm really struggling to sort of reconcile these incommensurable conceptions of being, both algorithmic, technological, and human. Now we need to recognize that humans are not pure humans; that they're also an assemblage of whole constellation of things that are not necessarily natural in themselves. And so, how does one address this question of power and the consequences, the political consequences that follow from incorporating discourses of hybridity into artificial intelligence and education?
I think there are a lot of really interesting lines, and I think we can't really, I completely agree that one can't disentangle the power question from the question of technology. And we both entangle the power imbalance that has marred the history of technology and humanity's interrelationship with it. But what I think is that we need to take a step back now and think about what kind of power relationships do we want in the future. And that's already what's not happening. That we don't think about what would be the best case scenario. And how can we configure something that is not either local or global, but local, and that harnesses the best, that comes from all corners of the world. And maybe one aspect also to be very aware of is that the technology that is currently embraced so willingly in the form of AI is something that reflects the Western mindset in vast majorities. Because those big frontier models that we're currently adopting, be that ChatGPT or Copilot or Claude or any of the others, they are all developed in the West and in particular in the US. And it's important, and you know that much better than I do, language embeds values, embeds mindsets. So if we're taking in those frontier models into our working spaces and in our life spaces, then what does that mean in terms of adopting subconsciously some of the values that those language models give us? So that's also a reason why in the work that I've been doing, or that I'm currently doing with Morocco and with Malaysia and some other countries in the global south, I think that in the global south, there is more possibility to really come up with a fourth path, which is not the American model, which is business overall, which is not the European model, which is regulation first and foremost, and which is not the Chinese model, which is state dominance. But an approach to, and I'm using again the word hybrid, because the hybrid future is going to be a connection between the past and the present and what's happening in the future. But that is pro-social. And that is deliberately configured in a way that brings out the best of what we have, but also what we could be.
If I can just pass on a question from Seder one online. As I'll just read the question. This may have been addressed already, but can we look at the situation from the standpoint of how much of this AI conundrum is being pushed by private industry and why they are being so reactionary to that? We as academics and universities.
I don't hear you, so
I'm rejecting.
Yeah, I'll read it. Sika, I think your voice is.
So this may have been addressed already, but can we look at the situation from the standpoint of how much of this AI conundrum is being pushed by private industry and why we are being so reactionary to that? We as academics and universities have been, I think he means reactive, not reactionary. I don't know. Reactive to this since the start and are being dragged around by the nose by the private sector. How do we stop this cycle and begin to establish our own standing on this topic without either parroting what the private sector says or being pushed around by this? Because a lot of thoughts and opinions publicly on this subject are being led and dictated by the private sector, and any opinions we may have that are contrary to this are being drowned out. I raise this point because our administration is following the same logic and is mandating us to include our curriculums, whether we like it or not. So that's a colleague also who's up. Thank you, Cancel. We can maybe add together. I think this is a.
And I think that speaks to, I think, also what Dr. Garvey spoke in the previous seminar or FILEC about why is the discussion only about integrating it. What about spaces where you do not want, right? So, again, so I agree with what Rob is saying, right? He's saying that we are being pushed and forced. And, this whole effort, right? Like all these workshops are also kind of do that this is what you need to do. However, there are, as an educator, there should be cases and it should be left to the autonomy of the faculty as to where they will, integrate it or where they will not, and they will decide not to at all. Because as an educator, you are building certain skills which are not yet developed, and for to build those, if you are resorting to AI, then what you are getting is work of the AI. You're not developing those skills or those ways of thinking or those ways of analysis or those ways of fashion. So I would say that why cannot we hack the space to resist also? Because again, yes, these are being pushed by the IT sectors, right? And the IT sector predominantly is based in the US, and they are they are running Israel, they're running this country, and they're running the world per country. But why are we towing that line? Well, I mean that is, I would go back. So yeah, why should we? Why is integration required a debate? There should be possibility of what using it.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah, please go ahead and then talk. If you will follow up on this.
Yeah.
It's a follow-up. Is this a follow-up or is it a different question?
It's quite different.
Okay, so let's wait. Yes.
my feelings, my sentiments in all this efforts to like push AI into all fields of life and education in particular. I feel like some parties know about the future, they can read the future, and we cannot. I mean, the others cannot do it. So it's like, I feel like you don't understand the significance of it, but just learn some things about it, and I mean, you'll see. So I mean, nobody is frankly openly telling me basically why I have to use it, like why I cannot avoid it, why I cannot be indifferent to it. So I mean, but I don't know. This is how I feel. Like I'm not. I feel like you're not clever enough to understand the significance. But I mean, invest in it. It will pay back. But I mean, where does this feeling come from? Because I mean, we are creating the future today, right? I mean, future is not something that will happen by itself. So what we invest today will determine what the future generations will have to face. So I feel like being pushed into it. But I mean, I don't want this to be read as I'm against it.
But I don't have to say that either. Like, this is not a space you have to.
No, I know, but I'm not against it. But I want to know what I am missing. Like, all being engaging in all these discussions and being exposed to all the workshops about AI, still some things are not clicking with me. So I hope what I fixed makes some static cocktails.
Yeah, despite resistance, I mean, some of us have you integrated it in their courses this last semester.
Yeah, we're asked to do it. Everyone's doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, overall. Yeah. And I know we'll be asked to do it again this semester. And so I have a question, like, in future, do you think based on the experience in US, do you expect will be asked to devote like percentage of diversity, AI, ethnicity, interaction with the professor gonna be, like the percent of the student professor interactions gonna diminish, or I know it's teaching the students independent learning and so on, but they just have this question mark, is it going to be like hybrid and integrated, like 50% student work on their take care of their learning using AI tools and AI engines, as mentioned, and then with the professor interaction and professor, like having an impact or guiding in the learning and so on. A bit of half or how's it happening?
And she can say that. I'm quite curious about the future of this. Or how they're doing it in the US or something. I don't know. The US is not doing this. I just know that. There's something about. But again, I will defer to Dr. Walther, who knows more. But also, I thought it would be important because we had a conversation where we were talking about this precise hubris. So that could be that AI could challenge, but it's not, Yeah. So a couple of comments. And as a disclaimer, I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know. So the very clear answer to answer all of these comments is I don't know. However, I think right now there's a lot of attention being paid to the how and the what. And that is just how we always deal with new tools. We're very excited about the what. And we're moving ever faster in our hamster wheel of doing more of the same. And now there is a push on understanding, on acquiring how to use linear tools. And that is something which is happening all around the world. That is not something that's specific to this institution or that is specific to the university. It is something, this AI mainstreaming is something that is true in the private sector, in the public sector, in the academia, in the international organizations, in the bilateral organizations. Everybody feels that, get me this magical new tool. I might not quite know what is going to give me,
but I don't want to be left behind. There is this fear, this deeply seated fear of, if I don't get into it, I will be left behind. And the same race towards AI is playing out right now at the macrosphere between the AI giants that you certainly read about that, where billions are poured into the AI space by Google, Microsoft, and others. Even so, they're quite transparent about the fact that they're racing towards artificial general intelligence. Even so, they don't know what that actually looks like and if it's going to be a good thing for humanity. But in the meantime, they're still investing in it at full speed and at all costs. So that's number one. Number two, I think where universities could play a really, really important role is to open up space to think about AI, and that with a critical mindset. And that is something which, interestingly enough, amongst all this hype around AI, I have not seen, not in the US, not in Europe, not in the global south, this space of thinking about AI from the point of view of the other two macro questions, which is not the what and the how and the where, but about the why and about the who. Why are we using AI? And who are we as we're using it? But also, who do we want to be with those tools? And I would argue those are questions that universities should open space to debate and to think about. Because those uncomfortable questions, once you're out of the university and once you're stepping into the professional sphere, you will have to cope with whatever setting you're placed into. And only if you have a very strong internal compass will you be able to shape the trend. Otherwise, you're just follow ahead. Yeah.
Can I just say something between that I believe in?
I said
hanging between the lines. We should not see AI as a destruction. I think we need to see it as a progression, as a historical progression. In the immediate past, we had the online revolution, which has paved the way to this kind of thinking. I remember 5 years ago at AY, we were talking exactly in the same way about online learning. That the future would be online.
Yes.
That all our courses would be online. So there's a sense of a normalizing effect of these multiple episodes of how technology has been talked about and has been promoted in education institutions. So I think we need to see this as a new episode in a longer history of how technology and innovation have been conceived in our education. So the more important thing I want is that all these discourses about integration, because we need to recognize that artificial intelligence is a business. It's a business model. And the discourses around its integration are taking place at a historical juncture where universities themselves are resisting. So if we're talking about resistance, what needs to be resisted, in fact, is not the symptomatic level of AI and so on. What has to be directly challenged is the corporate model of the university. Saying this is precise the structural nexus between how universities have been transformed and how AI is seamlessly finding its own niche in a culture that has become almost completely corporate. And therefore, spaces of resistance are also spaces that resist the discourses and practices of managerialism of corporatization and marketization and so on. So I think ultimately it's a fight not so much against humanity and the human, but I think against a capitalist model that has normalized itself to the point that it has become completely invisible. And now we're fighting symptoms instead of going to the root cause of the problem, which is the business model that universities have transformed themselves in. Business model that is crashing.
In the
We're already in the ruins of the world.
So I was grateful that you're bringing that up because so one of the reasons for me why I left the UN was that I found it very, very
Awful.
well, that's a way of looking at it. But I found it very disillusioning to see that organizations such as the UN that have as a dedicated justification to make the world a better place. That sounds naive, but if you look into the UN Charter, then that's more or less what's written in there. And that's why I had a long time ago joined. That sounds now very naive, I know, but that's still why I went into the humanitarian space. And what I came to see over the 2 decades that I was part of it was that a lot of what is happening in that space is driven by business ethics. And it is driven by who brings in the money. So there are programs being implemented because they are funded and because there are donor countries that are behind it. And so one of the reasons why I decided to step out of it was that I could no longer believe into the machine that I was part of, and that raising questions about it that I could find no answers meant, if one is honest about it, to come to the point where you question yourself. Because if you are a cop in a machine and you don't believe in the machine, well, then you might be a tiny, tiny bit, but at the same time, you are part of something that you're questioning. So you should question yourself. But the sad thing is that having now been over the past years more involved in the academic sphere, I found that a lot of the misgivings that I had about the UN are true about the academic setting. So what you say about a rehash is king, the sad aspect is that I have a very, very strong deja vu feeling here, where programs are being developed because there's money behind, and other research projects not being developed because there is no money and because there is no commercial longevity to it. Now, I'm very new in the academic arena, so I might have only very rudimentary understandings, but I saw that in the US, I saw that in Europe, I saw that in Malaysia, I see that here. And I think there is a lot of truth to be had in what you say, that there is something not with one institution, not with one sector, but with the overall societal model or the commercial model that underpins it all. So, yeah.
2 things. Firstly, just on what you just said right now, after academia, your next stop would be graduate, and you will find that the same corporate bricks there as well.
It happened already. Started.
Let's recap it. This is ethic. And this is why the Pink Floyd had the song Welcome to the Machine.
You said that you talked a lot about that originally, that you didn't face any distance regarding integration. So here's what. We could talk about AI a lot. for the last 2 years, and one of the things I had noticed is that people look at AI in the same light as the internet, the calculator, car, if you like. But the thing is that I have argued this for quite a number of years now, that is AI is not any of those things. AI is not a tool. AI can never be a tool because AI by definition is an agent. AI is an entity that, unlike any other tool throughout history, is the only thing that A, is more intelligent than humans, and B, most importantly, it is not human. AI will never be human, which means that AI does not have the same kind of priorities or motivations that humans does. All it has is a information processing capacity that is far outpowers anything that we are able to do. So when you combine those two things together, the question about integration of AI becomes a very, very different thing, because as an entity, AI, we don't know it absolutely yet, but AI will, when it gets smart enough, like literally like a few years, it will have its own agenda. It will have an agenda that is independent of humans. And it will have an agenda that it will push for itself that we are not part of, and worst part is if AI starts to see us as an obstacle to that agenda, okay, then it will work against us. So the way I look at it,
It sounds great.
But at the same time, I'm not naive enough to say that, okay, let's pull the plug, because that's not happening. So the thing that I have always been the way that I see the future about humans' relationship with AI, and more importantly, how I train my students as how they interact with AI, is the ability and our ability, okay, to look at AI as another thing that we need to deal with as opposed to integrate. That we actually have to form a working relationship with it in the same way that we have a business partner. We have to work with it, but at the same time, you need to be able to critique it. You have to be able to question it, and in many ways, we cannot trust it 100%. Because like I said, it's a static entity. It has its own agenda that does not involve us. So, my view is that our integration of AI, so what I see as the next important discussion that we need to talk about is how do we establish a kind of education and training so that the population in the new generation knows at what point do you stop trusting what AI is telling. Because, I mean, if you have a business partner, you don't trust them 100%. You do have a level of safeguards for yourself. And mind you, the AI is smart enough that whatever explicit safeguard you put into it, it will find a way to bypass. Okay? You could give it any directive, it will find a way around it. It will logic a way around it. Okay? But the question is, as we interact with AI, as we engage AI, at what point do we know, and how do we prioritize the way in which we question what AI is telling us? Does that make sense?
So I don't want to interrupt, but I think that's really important, and I just also don't want to lose the thread of sort of the transition from thinking about AI structurally to AI as an operation in reality, because I think that when we separate those conversations, like we lose something, and I feel like how do we, the question of like, why are we compelled to make that relationship when in business relationships we aren't compelled to choose the next person I see at the circus or something, or I'm not in a bachelorette show, like,
like a blind date or something that I have to. So that there's a question of what is the power behind and impelling this interaction and impelling this merger, impelling this partnership. And I think this idea of the social is so crucial here for Dr. Walther. Like, what is it that, what is the social that we have to defend, or as you're saying, kind of, because the question was not about integration, where she said that the people didn't resist it. I think the question about resistance was that we're all of these terrible corporate people, we're also okay with thinking about pro-social AI. I think that was the important thing. And I think it's like that was the issue. I don't think we're talking about people saying, yes, we're not integration. I think that ship has sailed. The question is in the impelled interactions and in the interactions with the people who would be technically complete believers or like kind of subservient to AI, we still have this idea of social responsibility that they're responding to. And my sense is you want to capitalize on that and in a way that might aid us into a different set of outcomes for human beings, right? And so, yeah, I wonder, that's part of the conversation that did you want to add something, Aliet?
I had two things to add, one to the former conversation and to the Nick's comments as well. First, you mentioned the fear be the main motivation for the AI rat race, right? There's the fear of being left behind. If you don't invest into AI, I mean, God knows what will happen to us in the next 5 years. Did I get it right?
That's part of it. That's part all of it.
No, I'm not saying all of it, but I'm curious about, I mean, fear is something created. So what are the sources of this fear? So any insights about that? You mentioned actually some, but I mean, again, I'm asking, assuming that there are some things that I'm not fully able to understand in the game of AI. And going back to Nick's comments, I mean, I'm hearing the reliability of the AI outcome, etc., AI created, generated narratives or whatever the outcome. But I mean, did we have this expectation from media? Did we have this expectation from any textbook, like 100% reliability? So I mean, to be honest, I'm using it as a content provider, and I approached it as critically as I would approach any content. So, I mean, there's that expectation. I mean, maybe I'm overreading, I don't know, that AI will be the ultimate word at a point. It will be 100% reliable, and then what do you do? Like, we just listen to one source? So I really have problems understanding this issue with reliability. Of course, it's not going to be 100% reliable. I mean, it should be even 90% reliable. I mean, like any other source. So why do we have higher expectations from AI, creative content? That's where I'm having problems. Like, we're exaggerating things. It's a thing issue, and things like,
I mean, you'd be better served if you're stepping away not from the quality of what it gives us, right? Because I think, but to its use, right? Or it's like the
no, this is not denying it, but this is one aspect of this pressures about AI. So I mean, we have the expectation, yes, one day it will have 100% reliability. Why do we have this expectation? Like, this is what I'm hearing as an undertone in some comments. That's it.
1 second. Go ahead, Doctor. Sorry.
No, I think we're currently putting a lot of different things into the same box. So maybe just a couple of comments on this aspect of the fear. I would argue that the counterpart of that fear is the greed. And both of them come back to this aspect of missing out on something that could feel really good. and to be left behind by something that others are benefiting from. On this aspect of AI not being like we are and not being something to be integrated but should be dealt with, I agree. And I think it's important to be very, very aware that it is not just like the other technologies that came from the typewriter over the car to the internet, because it's not unilateral, but it is something that is configured to understand you, whatever understanding in that way means, and to adopt whatever style is required that works with you and that is playing into all those Achilles heels that you have as a human being. At the same time, it has access to a gigantic 24/7 replenished treasure chest of data about you. It knows things about you that nobody else in the world knows. And it is configured to exploit every single aspect of that. And that we're with that still very much at the beginning. But I think that kind of super sophistication is something really important and really, really dangerous to always keep in mind. And it's also coming back to what you said of AI soon having its own agenda. I don't know if we will go there, but something that Geoffrey Hinton, so one of the fathers of AI, said, and which I think has a lot of truth behind it, is this aspect, our own chance to survive as a species will be to now build into the algorithms of the future compassion towards humanity. No, whereby, and we don't need to discuss that that is feasible or not or whatever, but I think the statement that he made that we need to somehow build a mothering instinct into the AI so that the AI does not see us or see human as an obstacle on its way to whatever agenda, but that it feels the kind of compassion that a mother would have towards its offspring that is weak and vulnerable.
That is also...
I mean, that says a lot, that has a lot of messages in itself, that message, but I think it is an interesting illustration of the fact that those who are building the AIs and have a lot of concerns about it. Where one could say, well, that was also true about the fathers of the atomic bomb, but I think there are some valid lessons we maybe learn, which have not been learned.
Professor Kazi, Professor Bon, online. Yeah, 1 second. Yeah, video answer question. 1 second. Dr. Moise, yeah. So let's hear Dr. Kazi because he's not
Yes.
so a while, and then wait.
So, in the field of visual communication design, we have a theorist, Donald Norman, and he came out with humanity-centered design. His perspective is matches yours pretty much. He's saying the same things, right? But so your focus is on inner dimensions, empathy, compassion, and if we bring in Norman's work on systemic design, policies, infrastructure, together we seem to think that AI should be both emotionally intelligent and structurally responsible. Do you agree with this?
I think it should be part of it. And ideally, in a really good case scenario, I think it would be very, very interesting if we could have some AI tools that are everything that you just say, that have the highest ideals, and to which decisions that can be sidetracked by human bias and by human agenda could be delegated. Because again, let's face it, the world is not in a good place. So maybe
about the revolutionary
Paris, did you want to ask the question? And then William, yes.
So I'm just thinking here out loud because I hear you talk. I'm a human rights lawyer and consider myself a feminist, dedicated to question of equality and question of integrity. So it's embedded within that mindset. I'm going to say now. I think I have the only resistance I have, and that in conversation to what Ahmed said today earlier in the panel, and I voiced that already earlier this year, I have a resistance to imposition. That's what I have the problem. I consider myself innovative. I like AI. Why not? Why not use it when it's tool that can help, right? To make sure that it's not replacing not just me, not replacing my thought, not replacing anyone else here. But I use it in class. Problem I have, it's interrelated. It's the motivation behind the use of AI. One of the imposition, and the other one is what's the rationale behind AI. You can see that in our convocation. Our entire convocation is about AI. Like, with all due respect, I mean, like, we have other things that in AI. We have the brain day, we have burnout, we have sexual harassment, we have a lot of things that are not AI, right? We might end up being AI, and I'm pretty sure it can get there. There are people getting married with their AI and have no problem. I mean, there is no limit to humans' innovation. Problem I have is with the imposition that it has become now a buzzword for donors and for, I don't know, like accreditation, AI. So it's becoming, I might buy, not next time I'm going to buy pasta. It's going to be said pasta with the consideration of AI. I don't know, like it's becoming redundant. So, and stupid, to be honest. I mean, even the workshops on AI could be also about strategical thing that I might need. How to use AI for bibliography. How to use AI to make sure that we enhance an ethical AI with students. I feel that we're marching at the same place. That's how I feel. I'm being frustrated right now. And that's a resistance I have. That administrations just want to look cool. We have AI this, I have degree, AI whatever. I'm laughing if people know that we even have AI in AUI in the name. He just like do it, as I called it already. Speak frank. So like seriously, I'm one of the people know me. I'm the one who speaks out of my frustration right now. So I have no problem with AI. People had, women or men at the time had issues with the washing machine. Why? But human nature and human history has also taught us that our bodies are reflections to mutation based on the lack of the things that we're doing. Our hands are shorter than it used to be millions of years ago because we're doing less, right? I'm afraid our brain will shrink. It's already getting there. And I'm afraid that our integrity is a big word for me. It's not just a word, it's a mind place. So why they're imposing all AI, all us, as if we don't have other issues to work on, that's one. And how do we do that without falling into this hipsterization of AI as if it's like the new God, right? I mean, like, and we're like the golden calf. It upsets me because we have a lot of other things to do. And AI, instead of using that, helping us to learn about AI, I don't know, I might be the only one who's frustrated here, and that's also okay. But I also want to see also if you have anything, if you've seen that in other places, that it just become like a buzzword that we need to use because it sounds cool. I don't teach cool. I don't come cool. I might. My son,
but with your lab classes, you look very cool.
No, you just think it's like I don't.
there. Too lazy. Is that by that's the reason I can't see you. Whoa.
You should see.
But I just want to make sure that we're not losing sight. Literally, I cannot see you without that. That's why I'm wearing neta perusa. So yes, this is where, and it's become like we get emails. Did you integrate it? Did you put it? Did you? And it feels that it's too much also on us. I mean, I went to law school to teach. I mean, I went to law school to I wasn't thinking about AI. I went to law school to save the world, right? I mean, unlike you, I didn't go to the UN because the UN is ageist and extremely discriminatory for everything else by itself. So, but I just want to make sure that we're not losing sight also of what is the expectation of us too. So yeah, that's what
Very quick. I have a very quick question, if you don't mind.
Yeah, Biliana waiting. Okay, so thank you. Of course, I think this is all very much in line, and I appreciate that. Want to add to Dr. Walther that I know that she expected that this will be a therapy session from our conversation, but I do want us to go somewhere with her vision for pro-social AI as well, right? Because she's not here to defend the university's agenda, like they just thought. Yeah.
Humanitarian intervention.
Yeah, so I think her, like that vision that she has, I don't think she has to defend something that she has not created for us, right? So she's entered into our. So I think this would be a nice segue into it. Is Dr. Poliana Popova's question? What are the three major important questions that matter for higher education, which are overlooked but important in your view? And given what you have experienced also in other education institutions, but also your experience beyond the realm of education, what exactly is it that's being missed? And this could be from within the realm of higher education or from the realm of AI work. What have you observed with these?
Yeah, I think the three most important questions are what I call the Lacko questions. I will even chip in a fourth one, which is the why, the who, the where, and the what, which is why are we using it? Let's start from the point of departure rather than 3 stages down the road, which is why do we use it? Why do we need it? And why is it of added value to us individually, to us as professionals, to us as institutions, and to us as a society? So I think this big question of the why, which has very little to do with technology, which has first and foremost to do with us as humans and as a society, should be the very point of departure. And second, the who. Who are we using it? Who are we using it as faculty, as students, and later on as professionals, and as part of the student community? And third, what does that mean de facto? Once we have answered the why and the who in a really candid way, including looking at some of the uncomfortable conversations, because it's, if you realize that those questions had been left unanswered for a really long time, that means that some of the answers that we will be finding to those, if we really go through it in a candid way, will be really uncomfortable because they will involve to change something. And we don't like change. And finally, and the fourth question I would chip in is, where do we want to go? Best case scenario. Where do we see ourselves? Personally, collectively, but also as an institution. Because there's this beautiful saying of you need to reach for the moon in order to land amongst the stars. But if you don't even give yourself that space to think about, in a world where I could not fail, what is it that I want to do, that I want to be, that I want to live in, and that I want to leave behind? once I go. This will now sound very esoteric, but I think it's very pragmatic. Because we can't reach the point Z if we don't know what it looks like and to really breed the desire to get there.
So I have two questions, very quick. It was one. Yes, but one actually related to the other.
One, I'm really curious to see with your other, if you have met in other contexts and what kind of interaction, like the comparison to what we have done with you. How was that? Are you faced similar question or similar concepts? So that's one thing. The second thing is really in relation about the idea of humanizing AI and whether there is an inherent or contradiction or compatibility between this. If from a very basic principle that human beings, the mind has created AI, and then we need to humanize AIs. But if for me, I'm just thinking about what's behind this idea of humanizing AI. Now, if, for example, we think about those who are pushing for the AI, which clearly in relation to capitalism and the CEOs, why would they want to humanize AI, for example, in order to make decisions that are not human?
So,
for me, is this idea of humanizing AI, the compatibility between this idea of humanizing AI, is there a compatibility?
So for me, even the human-centered AI is somewhat an oxymoron, and it's also sidetracking the conversation there, because AI is AI and NI, and that comes back to something like you said this morning. I think the I in the AI is a misnomer, because we have a very rudimentary understanding of our individual, our NI, our natural intelligence, and yet we have this ambition of recreating something. But how can you create something that you have not really understood? So all of this just as a point of departure, but I think the question should not be about humanizing, and it's a tool. Or I know you don't like saying that AI is a tool, but I still think that it is useful to consider it as that, because that also puts it in a certain part of our existence rather than having it everywhere. And that's where it is currently in the public debate, where it seems to be like during the COVID pandemic, maybe you remember, there was not one conversation that one could have where not at some point or another the conversation turned towards AI or integrate in the education. Now, at the time, it was about COVID. Now it's I apologize, I misspoke. During the pandemic, at some point, every conversation turned towards the pandemic, towards COVID, towards isolation, towards staying at home, towards working remotely, etc. Now, every single conversation, sooner or later, turns towards AI. If you're in the US, then before you move to politics. But at some point, there is still the AI topic that is creeping up. And I think it's really important to keep in mind that AI has come as something that has come in addition to everything that was there before. And it's right now taking up a lot of space. But it's one thing amongst many others. And it is for us as humans to put it in the place that we want it to occupy. But we can't leave that positioning to those who are pushing it on to society. And right now, and that's why I say the trend of the first, second, and third industrial revolution, where AI was driven by commercial interests and driven by those who designed, delivered, and deploy it was not in favor of society. But that's what's happening right now. And that's what humanity is currently willingly accepting, that we lead the reins to Google, Microsoft, NVIDIA, and others. And I think that's why universities should start to position themselves as counterweights.
Thank you. That's really valuable. Dr. Moise.
I'm too sure I wasn't important at regardless about, but the
So maybe I'll give you the last few minutes, Dr. Walther, to just give your vision for pro-social AI, and how do we help you, or how do students learn from what you're trying to teach them about? The one thing you mentioned that really struck me was that you're experiencing similar things as Dr. Maghrabi was asking about what are the reactions of other people. And I think that's really important because we tend to get isolated in our conversations because it's so mediated by the institution that we are somehow, first of all, accountable and answerable to those things. But you mentioned that your experience of Malaysia and Morocco has been very, very similar. And I don't want to put words in people's mouths, but why do you think so? And how is it different from your experience with these questions in the White West?
Thank you for that. So in terms of where do I would like to see it next is to identify and maybe support champions in the Global South as ambassadors and as advocates for an alternative path to the hybrid future. And to really open space in universities where students can ask those kinds of questions that we have been talking about for the past 2 hours. Because most institutions do not offer that space. Be that in the academia or be that in the private sector, that kind of space does not exist. Because the approach that is driven top-down is we need AI. Full stop. So I think if that is the space that can be carved out in whatever class you're teaching, and even if it's a seminar, that could be something really valuable and that students would really appreciate. Yeah. And the second aspect, and I mentioned that this morning, we didn't speak about it now, is this aspect of double literacy. To thrive in an era where AI will be all pervasive, it will be twice important to really understand in a holistic way all of the assets that we have at our disposition, which means the AI, yes, but also the NI, the natural intelligence. What does it mean to be an intelligent being? And I agree that it's not just about intelligence, but if we consider that NI is this multidimensional composition that I referred to earlier, with aspirations, with emotions, with thoughts, with physiological sensations, but also with us being part of communities, of countries, of a planet. And what does it mean to evolve in that organically evolving kaleidoscope? And how is that kaleidoscope influencing AI? And how is it being influenced by AI? Because I think it's this kind of knowledge work, I would better say understanding, that students should walk away with. Because that is the kind of very basic, foundational awareness that will be precious to carve out their space in whatever space they will be working in. And there aren't enough people in society who have that understanding.
Thank you so much. I think that's a great point to end. Thank you for your work in the world that can be so. The young people and the old ones can rise to your all expectations. I'm old.
wiser. Yeah.
But I was thinking about intelligent creation also. It's weird thinking to mind is like, where's this question of intelligence? Like the focus. So as you were saying, I mean, because I thought honestly studying like Hostomil and like studied all these years, the word intelligence was supposed to be such a problematic word to use because all you could come up with was Daniel's Bell, you know? And it's like this weird thing that there's a permission to use certain terms now, right? This question of intelligence, you know, even like it sounds worse than Vaishnav to be. So I'm just thinking like if Adorno and Horkheimer were writing now, like what would they be speaking of in terms of like from instrumental rationality to oneness, you know? So I think there's something. In relation to AI.
Yes.
Is she doing that?
2 years before, in her
The plasticity.
the postface to the book actually includes a comment.
Oh wow. Okay.
And I think we have not probably mentioned it, but many of these questions are also political in nature.
They're all political. The way that you're bringing up the question of, I mean, the joke I make with my politics students is like, all questions are like, it's like getting a little cookie, you know, what is it called? Fortune cookie. So like the moment you add the question of for whom and who, that is what makes it a political question. Otherwise, it's pure description, it's ethics with all due respect. Like it's not, it's, you know, it's morality or it's some sort of imposition or universalism. But the political question is exactly in those things that you're saying.
Nature of the state.
The extra, the W, right? The who and the for whom. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you, Steve. And Richard Poutou, now knowledge is power.
Absolutely.
So they're trying or try because power left us all that.
Yes. Or decide what it means. I mean, so the question of hallucination, I think of Charles Mills all the time. Like, what is this? And why are we okay with using words that have really good recent history? Of thinking about like white supremacy and relationship to, you know, these epistemologies of ignorance, as you were saying. So it's just, yeah, I'm just, that part shocks me is that what are we able to say about these things seems to be unhinged. I'm just going to stop at S6. Yeah, thank you, everybody, so much. And please, let's you know, please safe space for ourselves. For you to think about these things as you're also enacting the dicta. Mm-hmm.